The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you today by Draft. Looking for the best fantasy sports site on the planet? Sign up with Draft today. For a limited time only, our listeners will receive $3 matching their first deposit of at least $10. Use promo code DTR or visit draft.com/DTR to sign up now. Draft. Fantasy for the people. Now enjoy the show.
Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. Robert Wood, touchdown. LA. Dog goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Picked off. Marcus Peters coming off the edge, and Ryan will be wrapped up by Clay Matthews. Everett in stride. Wow!
Franklin Myers gets his hand on there.
Leno got a hand on it. Did he pick it? He did! Racing down the sideline is Akeem Talib. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown LA! Picked off by John Johnson. Well, it's Dante Fowler who is able to get to Breeze. Greg Zuerlein sends the Rams to the Super Bowl! LA will play for the Lombardi!
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It is the last regular season podcast of the year, which also means that it's pretty much the first podcast of the off-season. I guess if you're a Rams fan, you could say the off-season has started. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. Alexis Kraft is joining me as always, and this is episode 270. We'll get into all of it. The Rams did end up going 9-7. It's the third straight winning season in Sean McVay's tenure with the Los Angeles Rams. It didn't go exactly as planned. The Rams are not playing January football like, many intended or expected or however. But regardless, there were some things to take away from this season. When you really look at it, it wasn't a horrible season. It's just, when you're in the Super Bowl, the previous year, you hope to at least get to the playoffs the next year. So in a sense, it's a losing season, but they did end up finishing with the highest win percentage of any team that didn't make the playoffs. So, I guess that's something to kind of take away. It's the last game at the Coliseum. The Rams win 31-24. I think, we'll get into this, Alexis, but, just to take away, I think that the festivities at the Coliseum were phenomenal. I think, I obviously wasn't there, but just everything that I saw, it was really cool because I'm actually a big football historian. I feel as though the NFL doesn't really do a good job of preserving that history the way, say, the MLB does with the Baseball Hall of Fame. And keep in mind, you still call them World Series and championships still count in baseball going way back to even the 1800s. But with the NFL, they don't count NFL championships in the same category as Super Bowls. So it was really cool to see them kind of do the throwback end zone with the 1951 championship look that the Los Angeles Rams, of course, won that championship. And they won it, they ended up playing at the Coliseum that year. It was just kind of like a throwback, homage to the Coliseum. Obviously, it will still be there. It will be used by the USC Trojans as it's been used for years. But the Rams did rent the Coliseum, if you will, until their new stadium was ready. And it looks like it's going to be ready in 2020. So that was the final game. And to come away with a win, obviously, you would like to see them come away with a playoff win at home. But nonetheless, it's a win. I thought they did a really nice job of commemorating the moment, having their own logo and wearing the throwbacks, again, the end zone. And then, of course, letting the fans on the field at the end of the game and throwing this giant, firework brigade. Thought it was really cool. Just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know what, your thoughts are, but I did really enjoy my 3 times going to the Coliseum in which the Rams won 2 out of the 3. I was with you for the one this year against the Saints. I went to the one last year against the Packers. And then the first one I went to against the Redskins, in which they lost. So it was really cool to be able to be a part of history because they will never play there again.
Yeah, definitely. It was really a special experience, for me to get to go to at least one game in the Coliseum, which was the game that I went to with you this past September when the Rams played the Saints. So, yeah, a lot of history, in that stadium. The stadium's not going anywhere. Like you said, it's still going to be there. But the Rams' reign in the Coliseum, it has come to an end, and they're going to go to their new stadium, which I'm sure, from the looks of it and just what we've heard is just going to be awesome and a really cool experience. So that's something to look forward to for next season. So yeah, I agree. I think that the closing out of the Rams' reign at the Coliseum was really well done.
Yeah, and of course, it was capped off by a W, and the final play of the game was a turnover caused by the Rams. So, I think it went very well. I think just looking at this game, you gotta tip your hats off to the Rams offense, to close out the season. It's really a bummer that they weren't able to get the job done against the 49ers and, completely drop the ball against Dallas, because you take away the Dallas game, and surprisingly, this offense kind of found itself in the month of December. Whereas November was a total tragic, I don't think Jared Goff threw a touchdown November. December was different, and they played meaningful December football. They were in it until the end against the 49ers, and really the Cowboys game is one that you just kind of shake your head about. But in this game, you kind of have to look at it for what it was, and they left it all out on the field. They played a hard fought game against the Arizona Cardinals, kind of similar how I expected it to go. I had 33-23, and ended up being 31-24. I think it's kind of along the lines of it, kind of how I expected it. But, I think the silver linings that you can take away, obviously Tyler Higbee, he almost had a fifth straight 100-yard game, which hasn't been done in the history of the league for a tight end. So that would have been incredible. He was 14 yards away from that. He got in the end zone, as well as Cooper Kupp and Malcolm Brown. Todd Gurley was able to kind of, wiggle, find some room and, make a couple big plays, and, Taylor Rapp with the interception, and, there were some things to like. I mean, definitely it was hard to see guys like Michael Brockers and Corey Littleton go down, which could be their, the last time that they don horns. I hope not for, some of them, but there were some positives. I mean, you look at the way David Long played. It's good to see, your third round corner that you drafted, really get an opportunity near the end of the game and really, sell himself out and play, like it's on the line. And, with Jalen Ramsey and Troy Hill out, they really had to make do with what they had. Dante Dion came in because Darius Williams got hurt. He also had an interception on a tip drill by Traven Howard, who also is another guy, late round pick, last year. And, Howard was able to make an impact as well. So it was nice to see those players kind of see what's, on the horizon. But, it definitely was good that, they played all their starters, and they really tried to win this football game. And, at the end of the day, regardless of what you think, the sport's entertainment. And I think they definitely entertained the audience one last time at the Coliseum.
Yeah, for sure. So that's definitely, a positive thing to reminisce on, looking back at this season. It obviously didn't turn out the way that we wanted. It didn't turn out the way that we thought it could have and should have. But it is what it is. And now, as Rams fans, all we can do is look forward into the offseason. Because as you said, we are now technically in our offseason. Even though the NFL is not over, the Rams season has come to an end. Obviously, things don't really pick up until everybody's done in the first week of February. But there's still a lot that can happen. There's a lot to think about. You and I are going to kind of get into that briefly in this episode, just because people are kind of chomping at the bit. The Rams season is over now. Everybody wants to know what's next. Everybody, has things that they think should happen. And I guess I'll let you start of what you think the thing is right now to be thinking about.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I want to address Eric Weddle, because I know he had some words after the game where he basically said, hey, I'm not going to stay around if I'm a backup. That's not what I intend to do. And, I think that was basically him saying he would demand his release. And, I think with that being said, I mean, if he were to be released, the Rams would save a little bit over, $4 million in cap for this upcoming season, which helps. $4 million could be an Austin Blythe contract or a Marquis Christian contract. So you can't really discount that. Let's just, look, the writing is really on the wall for Eric Weddle. He struggled this season. And he really only played a ton because John Johnson went down with an injury earlier in the year. The emergence of Marquis Christian and Taylor Rapp really make me lean towards the idea that, well, Rapp is probably going to start. John Johnson's probably going to start. I think the Rams like having 3 to 4 safeties that they can not only have as depth, but guys that they will literally use in game. And I think that Marquis Christian is going to be somebody they want to bring back. So I do see Weddle being released. It is unfortunate. I was hoping it would end better for him. I was actually hoping he could kind of retire on top. And it's really unfortunate because the team that got rid of him, it looks like they might end up in the Super Bowl. So you always hate to see that. But, nonetheless, I appreciate him signing with the Rams, giving it a shot. And, it's kind of a bummer type of season. But, as we've kind of said, the whole thing, it will just continue moving on. With that being said, you have guys like Corey Littleton and Dante Fowler. And I think that's really right now, the biggest thing, because it's whether or not, will the Rams, choose one or the other, or will they do something, like maybe somebody on Twitter actually, it was actually the Spotrac Twitter. They, alluded to the idea of the Rams, actually, restructuring Jared Goff's contract. And I thought that was interesting because I haven't heard that. And if Jared Goff were to do such a thing, which would really just be moving around money and, placing it in a different year to better fit the cap situation, the Rams would free up $17 million in cap space, which, I mean, if you're doing the math, now you're close to 40 million or upwards 40 million, and you can technically sign both Littleton and Fowler. Assuming their market value, I'd probably put Littleton around 15 and Fowler around 18. I'm not saying you would 100% do that, but you could. And then, of course, you'd be able to pay Jalen Ramsey, which would likely lower your cap for this year anyway. So there are different things that they can go, different routes they can go in. They could also go the cheaper route at any of those positions. You talk about guys like Vic Beasley from the Falcons, kind of fell off after his first year, really coming on strong. He could be a cheap edge option if you don't want to pay Fowler. I was almost interested in the idea. I actually put this on our social media. I polled you guys, and I don't know if you guys saw, but Dante Fowler or Yannick Ngakoue, because they're both free agents, and Ngaue's actually younger, and he might actually be better than Fowler. Fowler has the familiarity with the defense, but it's almost interesting if you're going to pay top dollar for an edge rusher. It's almost like you'd rather have the better one and the younger one. On top of that, talk about Jadeveon Clowney potentially being a free agent. Somebody that could command upwards $20 million. So I don't really see him as an option because I don't think the Rams are going to spend that much. But, you do have your cheaper options, like I mentioned, with Beasley. And another interesting direction they can go in is Robert Quinn, who is a former Ram in himself. If he would want to return to the Rams, he's coming off a huge season with the Cowboys, really resurgent year and a contract year. But he's up there in age, so it wouldn't necessarily be a ton of money to grab somebody like that. So if they wanted, a quick fix, they could go with Robert Quinn, who of course does have some back issues you'd have to worry about. And then I think the last thing, just focusing on the defensive line, it'd be an interesting one, but kind of a wild card to free up Aaron Donald if the Kansas City Chiefs were not able to sign Chris Jones. I would really be interested to see the Rams go after him and place him next to Aaron Donald because he's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. Whether they play a 4-3 or a 3-4 next year, we don't really know what defense they're going to play, but he would fit either or. So, I'm a big fan of his, and I think, maybe grabbing a guy kind of like they did with Ndamukong Suh might ease, up Aaron Donald and the rate of double, triple, and sometimes quadruple teams on him.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are all interesting options. I obviously think that the Robert Quinn option is the most intriguing. Do I think it will happen? No, I think it won't happen for multiple reasons. I don't foresee Robert Quinn wanting to come back to the Rams. I also don't see the Rams particularly going after him. What I find most interesting about this is I 100% think that Jared Goff needs to restructure his contract. I would hope that he would do it anyway, but especially after, how this season went, I think he definitely should do it. I think he will do it if he's smart. It would really help the team out. He's certainly not worthy of the contract. I think we've all figured that out by now. And it definitely is going to, like you said, open up that possibility of potentially re-signing Littleton and Fowler. I think it's still a long shot because I do think that Fowler and Littleton are both going to want to be paid big bucks. I think they both should be paid big bucks. I think, when it comes down to both of them, they're both really, really interesting. My inclination is to keep Fowler over Littleton, and I know that a lot of Rams fans really love Corey Littleton, as do I. However, I think Dante Fowler played out of his mind this season, and I think he will continue to do that. So if it were up to me, I had to choose, I would choose Dante Fowler. However, we don't really know the logistics of everything yet. We might not have to choose. We don't know what's going to happen. I just think that I foresee having to pick one, and that would be my choice. However, like we said, a lot can happen. I think a lot of it is going to come down to Jared Goff and his contract. And you got a lot of other guys with big contracts. Todd Gurley also has a big contract. Aaron Donald does. However, I don't think he should, I think that he's the one person on this team that doesn't need to be restructured at all. So it's just going to be interesting. I know the Rams are going to probably, do their best to make the most of their money and restructure who they can, and they're going to have to figure it out. I mean, there's certainly not an easy answer here.
Yeah, and it would almost be interesting with Aaron Donald to restructure his contract because it's not really a punishment. It's not a pay cut. It's not, hey, we're releasing you and signing you for a lesser deal. Which is, kind of along the lines of where I felt the Rams were going to go with Brockers this upcoming season, and they ended up keeping him on the salary. But nonetheless, restructuring is really just moving money and trying to make it work for your books. So for this year, the Rams, and this is the thing that Tony Pastors does, and the all the front office guys, is they get together and they look at the books, moving forward, maybe all the way up to 2025. And they try to structure these contracts in a way that they benefit, each individual season. So the season with the least amount of cap space, that is when a guy is going to get paid the least. So what you will often see is that maybe somebody like Todd Gurley gets paid $9 million this year because, they're lower in cap space and they're not expected to have a ton of cap space to, afford him. And then they have a higher, cap hit. He gets paid maybe $16 million a year where they have more and they have an excess amount of cap space. That's really the tricky thing, is because these are carefully crafted. It's kind of all, one big puzzle. So when you start restructuring, you're essentially taking away the, initial strategy, and you're kind of rolling the dice. The thing is, obviously our friend, Ben Albright has come on here before, and he has said, my favorite thing he said is always, well, with the salary cap, it's a magic number and you can always manipulate it. And it's true. So while, the narrative has been the Rams don't have salary cap, I mean, you and I just mentioned two scenarios where the Rams could have over 40 to 45 to maybe even 50 million in space. And that would be enough to get Fowler and Littleton back and then some. So it's definitely an interesting offseason for the Rams. The weird thing is the Spotrac tweet that mentioned the Jared Goff, restructure, which I really like. They also mentioned the idea of trading Cooks. Now, trading Cooks is an issue because if you trade Brandon Cooks, you're going to eat $17 million in dead cap. And to me, I think the Rams would just rather keep him on the roster. He's not a cancer in the locker room. He's somebody they like. Really, the only worry is his concussions, but the guy stays healthy, man. He's still a talented player, had a down year because of the injuries, and of course, the quarterback play that was very inconsistent, mainly the deep ball. But for me, I don't really understand, and I know Spotrac knows their money, but I don't understand why you would cut Brandon Cooks and eat $17 million in cap that you basically just freed, by restructuring, just essentially restructuring Jared Goff. Like, I would use that money to sign either Littleton or Fowler or both. You know what I mean? So I don't really understand the idea of trading Cooks and eating that money.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, for me, the only situation, to trade Brandon Cooks would be for picks, or a really talented player, or else it's not really worth it. That's another thing, obviously, and it's a different topic. But the Rams are short on draft picks, so that's also something that I know a lot of fans are interested in, and it's something to watch out for. However, this Rams organization has shown that they're not necessarily super into high draft picks. They don't believe that they need them, so we can watch out for that. So it's going to be something to look out for. I mean, there's really no solid answer of what the best thing to do is if you're the Rams right now. I think things have to play out. I think you have to see who hits free agency, who wants to stay, who wants to get paid. It's certainly going to be a process. It's not going to be a quick answer.
Yes, and really the way I see this going down is the Rams, I think, are eventually going to pay Corey Littleton. I think that they will prioritize him. He's just such he's the epicenter of their defense. And as great as Aaron Donald is, I mean, this guy's now calling plays. So, I think he's extremely important. He's the second most important player on the defense after Aaron Donald. And then, you have Jalen Ramsey. So you have your big three essentially. And it's kind of like, how do you fit Fowler in? And Fowler's played very well this year, but there are times where he does lack the discipline to set the edge, over pursues, and allows a guy to really, gash their defense because now, his over pursuit just left his assignment open, or, rather the hole. And, I think that is an issue. I still think Fowler is very talented, but, for that money, I mean, you spend maybe $3-4 million more, and you're looking at Ngakoue or even Jadeveon Clowney. So, it'll be interesting to see what the Rams truly do. This is a team that has considered going out and trading for Khalil Mack in the past. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe they try and sign Clowney to like a 2-year deal or a 1-year deal, and then maybe trade him, after the season or something along those lines. This team, you can't predict their off season. You just can't. They went out and they traded for Brandon Cooks, even though everybody and their mother thought they were getting Odell Beckham Jr. They went out and they traded for Sammy Watkins out of the blue. They've made moves like that. They signed Andrew Whitworth. No one expected that. They signed Robert Woods. They make moves. And I think they've shown in the past they really can't rule them out from doing really anything. So it'll definitely be interesting, to see what they do this off season. And it's going to be interesting because I just don't think anybody's a guarantee to stay on the roster except for Aaron Donald. I mean, as good as, Goff played towards the end of the year, Jared Goff didn't look that great. Sean McVay didn't draft him. And I would never say 100%. I would never put money down that Jared Goff is going to be your starting quarterback in 3 years. The NFL changes on a dime, and it would be a little different, but this Rams team wouldn't shock me no matter what they did. I mean, who's to say they don't go out and they trade, Jalen Ramsey? I'm not saying they should, but, I guess my biggest worry is going 9-7, not making the playoffs, and having this new stadium coming up. Does this team start to kind of reach and make splash moves and try and, really inflect change and overreact to something that's really not all that bad.
They might. I wouldn't be shocked if they did. I think the best thing to do if you're the Rams right now is to just wait until the entire season's over. I know it's hard when your season ends and other people are still going because, even us, we're focused on the offseason already. I'm sure the Rams are the same way. They're just focusing on the offseason. I think that everybody, including the Rams, just needs to take time, see how the rest of the season plays out, give people time to gather their emotions and really think things through, think about what they want and where they want to be. And then, when the season ends, we can really go from there.
Yeah, of course. I think that there's obviously going to be a lot because the Rams also are going to have to, draft, and they're going to have to really hit it out of the park without a first rounder again. And, after a draft where they really drafted a few guys that they didn't need necessarily, case in point, Darrell Henderson, as much as, I was really excited for the pick. I know you liked the pick. Darrell Henderson wasn't in need, and I think that was proven the way they used him this year. So because of that, they're kind of behind the eight ball a little bit, and they lack in some areas, and they are losing Andrew Whitworth. At least his contract is expiring. We'll see if he retires or not. So it's going to be a tough decision. The Rams really are not, fan favorites are probably not going to be back next year. You already went through this with, guys like Trumaine Johnson, Janoris Jenkins, Alec Ogletree, Robert Quinn, Chris Long, William Hayes, you name it. You've kind of been through it. It's kind of the NFL offseason in a nutshell. So we'll find out, what the kind of spine of this team is going to be, because it'll be interesting. I wouldn't rule anything out except for Aaron Donald, being moved. I think Aaron Donald is the one thing, and Sean McVay. I think those are the two most untouchable assets on the Rams right now. Everything else, I think, is up for grabs. And I'm not saying that should be, because I think guys like Robert Woods do their job to, the fullest. I think they're incredible. But I really just, at this point, wouldn't rule anything out except for those two, Aaron Donald and Sean McVay.
Yeah, I agree. It's certainly going to be interesting.
Yeah, and really just to close this thing out, I know everybody's really hung up on not having a first round pick, and I get that. It's the 20th overall pick, and yes, would it be cool to have that? Sure, but as long as they sign Jalen Ramsey, is that Jeffrey Okudah going to be better than Jalen Ramsey? Like, he could be. It's physically possible. But what are the odds of that? And that guy wouldn't even be there at 20th. So essentially, it's like you drafted Jalen Ramsey 20th overall. That's kind of how you have to look at it. And in the past, the Rams have, they got Gerald Everett in the second, whether you believe it was a reach or not. They got guys like Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee, Cooper Kupp, John Johnson the third. They got all those guys in the second, third, fourth round area. So they tend to really nail those picks. So we'll see. They're really going to have to do their best there, but I don't think the first round pick should deter you from really enjoying this offseason, because I think it's going to be exciting. And plus, all you uniform fans, because I swear there's not a fan base that cares more about uniforms. Of course, I don't know if there's a more iconic uniform. That news is going to be coming. That's going to be right around draft time as well. I think that's when the Jets uniform leaked. So with the new stadium comes new uniforms. With the new offseason comes new players and personnel. We didn't really even talk about the coaches. Real quick, Alexis, do you think Wade Phillips is back as defensive coordinator?
Yes, I don't think he should be, but yes, I think he will be.
Okay, so you're for getting rid of him, but you think that he'll be back?
Yes.
I'm kind of undecided. I wouldn't mind the Rams moving to a 4-3. I think they have the personnel to run a 4-3, maybe attacking style 4-3, kind of similar to Greg Williams, but a little bit more coached up and less aggressive. But I would really be interested to see Aubrey Pleasant as DC. And I think really Wade Phillips is gone. I think that was always the plan. That's why they signed him into 3 years. And when they had Aubrey Pleasant, they knew, I mean, if they didn't lose him last year to Zach Taylor, the Bengals just went 1-15. So, they didn't lose him last year. Lucky them. But if you think Zach Taylor isn't considering, hiring his buddy Aubrey Pleasant to bring him over to the Bengals and fix that defense in year 2, then, you're sadly mistaken. So, the Rams might have to promote him to DC, and I think that was really always the plan, but we'll see. Final thoughts from me. I would like to see the Rams pursue, I said this on Twitter, I'd like to see them pursue friend of the podcast, Dan Orlovsky. I think his knowledge of the game is off the charts. I think he's going to have a future in the NFL whenever he wants it. Right now, he's killing it on ESPN. But I definitely think if McVay called him up, he'd really have to consider that. Just putting him in the booth and letting him be a passing game coordinator, I think could do Sean McVay and the Rams some good, as well as Kellen Moore, the former quarterback from Boise State, and of course, the Dallas Cowboys, who ended up being a coach for the Dallas Cowboys. Really like to see him get a shot as well. It seems like the Cowboys are cleaning house. So it'll be interesting who the Rams keep around, but I don't think you can get rid of Coach Bones. I think you have to keep him. His contract is expiring, so I'd like to see them re-up him. If they want to bring Wade Phillips back, I'm totally for it. I think he's the greatest defensive coordinator ever. He's phenomenal. And I think, he brought the Rams, despite the fact they had some inconsistencies, that was one of the best looking Rams defenses I've seen. So I wouldn't necessarily be against bringing him back. And then I think with the offense, I just think there was too much that was put on Aaron Kromer's plate. The guy is an offensive line coach. I think he was asked to do too much as the running game coordinator. And I think Shane Waldron, who is somebody that, he's a solid offensive mind, but this is somebody that's kind of stayed around the tight end room and really been a tight ends coach. And they kind of promoted him pretty quickly right up to the passing game coordinator. So, it'll be interesting, especially with guys like Zach Robinson, who was the quarterback coach this year. He came from Pro Football Focus. So, they have some guys and we'll definitely have to see the direction they go in. The personnel is definitely something that's up in the air. I don't think anybody like Les Snead is going to go, but I did see, all over kind of the social media aspect of everything, that the Rams were going to make some changes in both the coaching personnel and the front office personnel. So that will really be interesting. Things are about to get very interesting for the Rams. Again, this offseason is going to be wild, so stay tuned. But for Jake Ellenbogen, she's Alexis Kraft. This has been the Downtown Rams podcast, and we're signing off. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, and you guys take care. We'll be back soon, and we got plenty of draft interviews this draft season, as well as all sorts of off-season coverage. Take care, guys. Goodbye.